Intelligence is the collecting and processing of the information about foreign countries and their agents, which is needed by a government for its foreign policy and for their national interest and security. Intelligence is also designed to give a policymaker information that is not available anywhere else that will help to form policy decisions. Intelligence operations are clandestine activities designed to gain access to something that someone else wants to keep hidden. There is human intelligence, which is basically running agents, finding people who can tell you what you need to know. There is also signal intelligence, which is designed to intercept conversation. Another key type of intelligence is satellite imagery. Why states need to practice intelligence? Intelligence is important for the survival of the state. For this reason, many states have created at least one intelligence agency with different structure and capabilities and competence depending on the state, its needs and its history. State needs to practice intelligence to help fulfill legitimate tasks of the government. Intelligence also may help to save life and protect country. For example, if there are any threat of our state, the intelligence community will largely got the warning, even though they didn't know how and when they attack. But this is actually will help states to take an action, and states need to practice intelligence to serve, inform, assist, and support policymakers or decision makers in their work, and to provide support to security or military operation and organization. How state conduct intelligence? State conduct intelligence through the process what we call intelligence cycle. The intelligence cycle is the process through which intelligence is obtained, produced, and made available for users. The intelligence cycle starts with the planning and direction, when you are trying to figure out what you need to know. The second stage would be collection. Collection is the gathering of the raw information to produce finished intelligence. There are many sources of information, including open sources such as foreign broadcasts, newspaper, and books. There are also secret sources of information. The next step is processing, which involves converting the vast amount of information. Then it goes to analysis, and that where you are trying to figure out what does this mean, why did this happen, and then finally get disseminated to a policymaker.
Good day to everyone, I'm Angel. In this part, we will try to know more about the outcome of intelligence work, which will bring us to look more into intelligence sources and the level of intelligence. There are several types of intelligence resources which will help to produce different types of intelligence outcome. The first is imagery intelligence. This intelligence gathering disciplines where the imagery is analyzed, and we can get image intelligence from imagery satellite, social medias, and cell phones. Secondly is human intelligence. Human intelligence is defined as any information that can be gathered from human resources. We can get this type of intelligence from victims, witness, or spy. Next is signal intelligence. This is a type of intelligence that derives from electronic signals and systems that used by the foreign targets, such as communication systems, radars, and weapon systems. Fourth is measurement and signature intelligence. This is the scientific and technical intelligence information that obtained by quantitative and qualitative analysis of data that derive from specific technical source sensors for the purpose to identify targets and events. This often includes radar intelligence, nuclear intelligence, and chemical and biological intelligence. The fifth we have is open sources intelligence. It is a multi-method methodology for collecting, analyzing, and making decisions about data accessibility in publicly available sources to be used in intelligence contexts. Next, we do have technical intelligence. The intelligence is about weapons and equipment used by the armed force of foreign nations. Last but not least, we have counterintelligence, which is CI. We will further explain about these sources in the last slide. So these are all the 7 primary sources types that we have today. Now, we will look more into level of intelligence. There are 3 levels of intelligence, which is strategic, tactical, and operational. Strategic intelligence will be more on policy, tactical will be more focused about procedure, and the operational intelligence is more about the executive part. First, let's look into the strategic intelligence. This is the intelligence that needed by the policymakers to make policy and military decisions at the national and international level. The strategic intelligence includes information about the capabilities and intentions of foreign countries. Tactical intelligence. This intelligence is provided to military leaders in the field to accomplish immediate tactical objectives. Because of the enormous destructive power of modern weaponry, tactical intelligence is information that required by military field commanders. The decision-making of political leaders often must take into account information derived from tactical as well as strategic intelligence. It's focused on support to operations at the tactical levels. The mission is to identify, observe, and collect data that will later be delivered to command elements. It centers on immediate threats. Then we have operational intelligence. In this intelligence, they will analyze the operating environment. They will look into the information that are required by military field commanders. This intelligence will focus on military capabilities and intentions of enemies and adversaries. They will support, plan, and conduct joint campaigns. Military leaders use this intelligence to plan and accomplish strategic objectives within the operational area. Counterintelligence is aimed to protecting and maintaining the secrecy of a country's intelligence operations. Its purpose is to prevent spies or other agents of a foreign power from penetrating the country's government's armed service and intelligence agencies. Counterintelligence also is concerned with protecting advanced technology and deterring the terrorism. Counterintelligence operations sometimes will produce positive intelligence, which including information about the intelligence gathering tools and the technique of other countries, and also about the kinds of intelligence that other countries may be seeking. Counterintelligence operations sometimes involve the manipulations of an adversary intelligence services through the placement of modes of double agents in sensitive areas. In authoritarian or totalitarian states, counterintelligence also encompasses the surveillance of keys and titles, the repressions of divert.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good evening to all. My name is Islim Binti Ishaq. My metric number is 271831. Let's continue our presentation today with the second part of our group assignment. The main title of the second part is about military. The first thing that I want to explain is about why do states choose military tools. National power has several elements. Some are observable, including the economic wealth and technical posts, while some elements are undefinable, such as spiritual power and strong national will. There are a few types of military forces, such as the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard. Military forces, when they are powerful and ready, they are reliable and qualitative, which is an addition to a nation power. When the intangibles, national will, and those powers are formed into one instrument, national power becomes powerful. The proposition that power and threat of force are a necessary tools of diplomacy and have a role to play in foreign policy is part of the traditional wisdom of statecraft. And it is true that history as well as the recent experience supports the view that efforts to deal with conflicts between states solely by means its peaceful diplomacy are not always successful and which result in significant harm to one's national interest. One finds in history many cases in which threat of force or the actual use of force were often not only costly but also ineffective. Let me turn briefly now to the question whether any useful decision rules or specific guidelines can be formulated and agreed upon for using force or threats of force to deter or deal with these many challenging crises. Perhaps the best general answer to this question was given by the President Bush in his farewell address. President Bush stated that there can be no single or simple set of fixed rules for using force because each and every case is unique. The second thing that I want to explain is how do states conduct military tools? Given that historical experience supports the necessity of resorting to force and threats of force at times, but also emphasize the risk of doing so, we are left with the central question in the theory and practice of foreign policy, which is under what condition and how can military force and threats of force can be used effectively to accomplish different types of foreign policy objectives at an acceptable levels of cost and risk. The issue of which branch of government has the authority to define that mandate and make decisions on using force is now being strongly contended. Beginning in the 1970s, Congress demanded and assumed a far more active role in the making of foreign policy and in the decision-making process for the employment of military forces abroad that had been thought appropriately. As a result, the centrality of decision-making authority in the executive branch has been compromised by the legislative branch to an extent that actively interferes with that process. At the same time, there has not been a corresponding acceptance of responsibility by Congress for the outcome of decisions concerning the deployment of military forces. We prefer, of course, to limit any conflicts in its early stage, to contain and control it, but to do that, our military forces must be deployed in a timely manner and be fully supported and prepared before they are engaged, because many of those difficult decisions must be made extremely quick. Some on the national scene think they can always avoid making tough decisions. Some reject entirely the question of whether any force can be used abroad. They may maintain the principle that military force has a role in foreign policy. They are never willing to name in the circumstance or the place where it will apply. On the other hand, some theorists argue that military force can be brought to bear in any crisis. Some of these proponents of force are eager to advocate its use even in limited amounts of simply because they believe that if there are American forces of any size present, they will somehow solve the problem. Neither of these two extremes offer us any lasting or satisfactory solutions. The first is undue reserve. This would lead us ultimately to withdraw from international events that require free nations to defend their interests from the aggressive use of force. The second alternative is employing our force mostly indiscriminately and as a regular and customary part of our diplomatic efforts. The last thing that I want to explain is what are the results of conducting military tools? Well, in today's world, the line between peace and war is less clearly drawn than at any time in our history. Several aspects of the post-Cold War era have added new wrinkles to the dilemma of whether and how to use force and threat of force to back diplomacy. The international community has been overburdened by crisis situations that call for peacemaking, peacekeeping, nation building, and the humanitarian assistance. Lack of agreement on the nature and importance of our national interests in this new geopolitical setting has added new dimension and twist to the debate as to when and how force and threats of force should be employed. Moreover, there are little prospect that a modern political agreement will be formed to build a strong and effective foreign policy. Aware of the consequences of any misstep, yet convinced of the precious worth of the freedom we enjoy, we seek to avoid conflict while maintaining strong defenses. Our policy has always been to work hard for peace, but to be prepared if war comes. Yet so blurred have the lines become between open conflict and half-hidden hostile acts that we cannot confidently predict where or when or how or from what direction aggressions may arrive. We must be prepared at any moment to meet threats ranging in intensity from isolated terrorist acts. One can acknowledge that the United States has been correct not to intervene in any one of many crises around the globe. American interests do not always clearly require us to do so, and the international community itself is overwhelmed with such crises and cannot respond to all of them. But often U.S. interests do merit some response, and the response, if any, has tended to be a minimal one taken in the hope of limiting the extent of involvement and cost.
Case study about military tools. War is an intense armed conflict between states, government, and societies. Afghanistan War is an international conflict in Afghanistan beginning in 2001 that was triggered by the 9/11 attacks. After the attack of 9/11, the US invaded the country and demanded the terrorist leader Osama bin Laden be handed over. The use of military tools in this war has caused huge impact to human and environment. Many civilians are being killed during bombing and raids. In fact, 157,000 people have died in the war because of the use of military tools. The US has contributed significantly to the civilian death rate due to the airstrikes and raids. And then the use of military tools in wars also caused destruction of infrastructure and destruction of cities.